Lots of attention paid to left tackle this year. A lot of people said, why not? Why don't you pick a left tackle? Why didn't you pick a left tackle in the second round of the draft? Why didn't you sign Jonah Williams or Tyron Smith? So this is something I've done throughout the year, and I'm going to continue to do it through the rest of the season because I think it's important. It's important to continue to work at what you do. It's important to share the reality of a situation with listeners and viewers and not necessarily dive deep into the narrative echo chambers. And I feel like, when people talk about the offensive line, a lot of it's been, Vederian Lowe stunk, but why didn't they go out and get a left tackle? I'm here to tell you that Vederian Lowe is not the reason why the offensive line has had its issues throughout the year. Now, he's been part of the problem at times, certainly, but he is not the number one reason why this offensive line has struggled. They've played better recently, but he's not the reason. And I'm also here to tell you, you might disagree with this when I say this, but I'm going to back it up. So give me a couple minutes here. I'm also going to tell you that Eliot Wolf sticking with Vederian Lowe wasn't the worst decision he made in the offseason. And it wasn't even a bad decision given the options that he had as of right now. Now, let me explain. Vederian Lowe, his Pro Football Focus grade is 55.9. If you were of the thought that the Patriots screwed up by not drafting a tackle in the second round, I'm here to tell you that Patrick Paul has a worse overall grade than Vederian Lowe. I will also tell you that Patrick Paul has only played 100 snaps. Vederian Lowe has played 605. I will tell you that Blake Fisher has been much worse than Vederian Lowe and has only played 114 snaps. Roger Rosengarten has played better than Lowe, according to Pro Football Focus. But a couple of things about that. Number one, Rosengarten's playing right tackle, not left tackle. That's a difference, right? Secondly, Rosengarten has Lamar Jackson, Todd Monken as offensive coordinator, and the Ravens' offensive line was the 8th best team in pass protection composite rankings going into last week. Therefore, Rosengarten is playing with an MVP caliber quarterback who is incredible at running around and creating plays, right? He's got Todd Monken for the second year in Baltimore. He's been there for 2 years as the OC and has done a good job in Baltimore. And the offensive line is one of the best pass protection offensive lines in football. Those things help. Context matters. Kingsley Suamataia. I would have drafted Suamataia in the second round. He was in my mock draft. He has been terrible. He's been the worst by far. Vederian Lowe, again, his overall grade is 55.9. Suamataia's overall grade per Pro Football Focus is 36.7. Suamataia was so bad that he was benched. Kansas City's left tackle situation was so bad that they actually played Joe Tooney at left tackle this past week. Joe Tooney. They went out and they signed DJ Humphries just a couple of weeks ago because left tackle's been so bad. So Patrick Paul, Blake Fisher, Kingsley Suamataia, those guys who have attempted to play left tackle, they've all been worse than Vederian Lowe. Rosengarten's overall grade, by the way, was 63.6, so he's been better than Lowe. But again, I gave you the context. How about Brandon Coleman? Brandon Coleman, who was drafted ahead of Caden Wallace, he's been better than Vederian Lowe, 63.4 overall grade, 521 snaps. But again, I will give you the context. Brandon Coleman also has had Jaden Daniels to work with all year long, yet another quarterback that is similar to Lamar Jackson in a lot of ways, right, with their ability to run and things you can do offensively. Brandon Coleman also has Cliff Kingsbury as an offensive coordinator who has a pretty good reputation as an OC. And Washington's pass protection has been 13th best in the league heading into last week. So Washington's offensive line has also been pretty damn good when it comes to pass protection. So the two tackles that were drafted in the second round and then at the top of the third round that were drafted, one of them's a right tackle and has been in a much better position to succeed and has been healthy. Lowe has been part of an offensive line that's been juggled constantly. A first-time offensive coordinator since 2009. First Jacoby Brissett, then Drake May learning on the job, right? With a lot less experience than a guy like Jaden Daniels, certainly of Lamar Jackson. So, and Vederian Lowe was hurt at the beginning of the year. So those other guys have been healthy, and they've been in much better positions to succeed because of the cast around them and the offensive play caller. Now, what about the free agents? Well, Tyron Smith had a good year, 73.6 overall grade, but he was placed on IR. He didn't get to 600 snaps. Vederian Lowe has played more snaps than Tyron Smith has played this year. And Tyron Smith is now on IR, and his career might be over. And I know some might say, well, Nick, you can't play the, he got hurt game. I can play the he got hurt game if that was part of the resume. One of the reasons why I would have gone after Tyron Smith, and I don't think Tyron Smith signed here because he wanted to play for the Jets and Aaron Rodgers and he thought they had a chance to win. He was wrong. But one of the reasons why you would be hesitant to sign Tyron Smith is because he has a long injury history, and he's beyond 30 years old. So it's not necessarily a surprise that he couldn't make it through the year. Jonah Williams is playing right tackle, not left tackle. Again, big difference. He's been better than Vederian Lowe, but he also just got back from IR. He was hurt. Similar situation to Tyron Smith. He has an injury history. He has an injury history with his knees. And guess what? He hurt his knee and he missed all that time. He just got back right before Thanksgiving. He returned from IR on November 24th. So when you look at Vederian Lowe, Evan Lazar wrote about his game against Indianapolis. Lowe was solid once again. He got called for a hold when May left the pocket, which happens. He allowed just one hurry when he got matched up with DeForest Buckner. And Lazar says that Lowe did not grade out well by Pro Football Focus as a run blocker, but Lazar didn't see it that way. He thought Lowe had a solid all-around game and had 0 procedural penalties. So I'm not telling you that Vederian Lowe is great, but what I'm telling you is all the people that are talking about they should have drafted this guy in the second round, none of those guys have outplayed Vederian Lowe by a significant margin. And the two guys that have been better than Lowe, circumstances were much better to help those guys out. I'm sure they're not on the island as much as Vederian Lowe's been on the island because the right tackle situation's been a disaster because Chooks decided to retire due to mental health and because Caden Wallace has been hurt all year. So this is not to defend Eliot Wolf's overall offseason from last offseason. I've talked about it. I gave Eliot Wolf at the midway point a D- for his offseason. I will do that again once the season is over, and we will grade him out. So I'm not defending Eliot Wolf's job here because he hasn't done a good enough job from what we see right now. He got a D- on my podcast. But what I am sharing this information for is, again, number one, the reality at left tackle is that it's just tough. It's really tough to find a franchise left tackle unless you draft the franchise left tackle in the first round. That's just the whole thing. That's the whole idea. The reality at left tackle is if you want somebody who's bona fide and almost a guarantee, not a guarantee, but as close to a guarantee as you can get at left tackle, you're going to draft that guy high up in the first round. I mean, even Tyler Guyton, who was drafted later in the first round by the Cowboys and said that the Patriots tried to trade up to draft him, which nobody ever talks about, but Tyler Guyton said that in his post-draft press conference that the Patriots tried to trade up and draft him. Tyler Guyton's been god-awful in Dallas. God-awful. So You decided to draft Drake May. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that decision, right? If you wanted as close to a guarantee to have a left tackle that was a bona fide guy, then the best way to get that, to acquire that, was to draft the tackle at number 3 or trade down a couple of spots and draft one of the top 3 tackles that were in the draft. You had a choice to make, Drake May or the tackle. Some wanted Marvin Harrison Jr. Some didn't even want a tackle to be drafted. Remember that? After free agency, some said draft Marvin Harrison Jr. So when you look at it, again, that was your best chance. You decided to draft Drake May. I don't think anybody is second-guessing that. You drafted Drake May over Joe Alt. You drafted Drake May instead of trading down with the Giants and maybe drafting somebody like Latham or Fashanu. And I think it was the right decision. I thought it was the right decision back then, and I feel even stronger about that now. Let me also say this, because I see my guy JD saying Wolf should have stockpiled available line talent, even low-end bench guys. JD, I appreciate the comment, but let's look at what happened. He did stockpile. He brought in a number of guys. Chuks Okorafor left the game of football due to mental health. I don't know what's going on. I don't pass judgment on guys with mental health issues. I take that seriously. If you want to, you can. Chuks left. I'm sure Eliot Wolf did not think Chuks was going to leave. Even if Chuks didn't work at left tackle, he would have been your number 1 right tackle. He was practicing in camp. They had 11 straight practices, and he was going to be your starting right tackle. It was going to be David Andrews, Owenu, and Chuks Okorafor from center to right. Chuks leaves. He's out of the equation. Your backup right tackle was going to be Caden Wallace, if you go off of what was happening at camp. Caden Wallace got hurt, and I think he was placed on IR October 4th. So Caden Wallace did not even have a month of his rookie season to prove that he could play. He got hurt pretty much right off the bat. Last time we saw him, he was on a scooter. So at center, people have issues with center. Again, David Andrews was your starting center. Jake Andrews was going to be your backup center. Jake Andrews got hurt. Jake Andrews got hurt after free agency, after the draft. So your backup center got hurt. Nick Leverett was not supposed to be playing center. Nick Leverett got put at center because David Andrews got hurt. Jake Andrews was hurt. They were both going to be out for the season. And at that point, they didn't have an answer. I don't know how many teams carry 3 centers. I'm guessing none. So Nick Leverett got slid over. Nick Leverett didn't work out. What'd they do? They went out and they got Ben Brown. Ben Brown's actually been pretty good. Left guard, your starting left guard was supposed to be Sidy Sow. Sidy Sow got hurt. He hasn't been the same the entire year. He's got a foot and ankle problem. He hasn't been the same guy. So you had a change, right? Cole Strange, as we know, out for most of the year with his injury. So you had to move from Sidy Sow, who was the original plan at left guard, to Michael Jordan, who really is, a second guard, third guard on the left side. At right guard, because of what happened at right tackle with Chuks and Caden Wallace, you had to slide Michael Owenu to right tackle when we know, again, that was not plan A, because plan A, after, they had 11 straight practices when Owenu was your starting right guard. You had to slide Owenu to the right tackle because of Chuks Okorafor and Caden Wallace's situation. So now when you slide Owenu to right tackle to try to solve that problem, now you've got to play Layden Robinson, the 4th-round rookie at right guard, before he's ready. And now he's up and down, and he's not a very good pass blocker, which tends to happen to a lot of young interior offensive linemen. So we have to think about the context. This was not plan A. I'm not telling you that plan A would have worked. I'm not telling you that Vederian Lowe, let's just think they were healthy. Vederian Lowe, Sidy Sow, David Andrews, Michael Owenu, Chuks Okorafor. That was going to be your offensive line week 1. I'm not telling you it would have worked. But what I am telling you is this ain't plan A. This is not even plan B. This is like plan E with the offensive line. So that's what happened. They had Band-Aids throughout like the first 10, 11 weeks. They finally have some continuity, and they haven't been great, but they have certainly not been terrible. So, I mean, some things you can't control. And some will say, oh, you're just making excuses. No, I'm giving you reasons. You can't control when a young guy gets hurt. Caden Wallace played a ton of football at Penn State. You can't predict he's going to have a serious injury and be done after month one. You can't predict Chuks Okorafor is going to wake up one day and say, yeah, I don't want to play football right now. You can't predict that. You can't predict David Andrews and Jake Andrews, your 1 and 2 centers, going down with season-ending injuries. These are things you can't predict. And you can't go out there and just, sign a guy and plop him in right before the season or during the season, because it's very tough to get offensive line help because teams are trying to keep as much O-line help as they can. So, they have to absolutely add more bona fide, proven talent on the offensive line. They have to do it. But this was not the plan. This is, we got to adapt and adjust to a bunch of things that happened. 4 or 5 significant injuries and a guy leaving due to mental health. And I don't know how many offensive lines, I don't know how many teams would be able to survive with their third string right tackle, their third string center, their, third string guard on the left side. I don't know how many teams would be able to survive that. I think most offensive lines would stink out loud if they had a bunch of third stringers and practice squad guys out there. But they're not out there because Eliot Wolf said we're going to sign a practice squad guy and he's a starter. That's not what happened. It's not what happened. That's not the fact. That's not the reality. The reality is these guys are playing, these third stringers are playing because they had to play. Because the guys you wanted to play weren't available. You got to put somebody out there. And it's not the offseason, so you can't correct it. You can't go out there and sign somebody. Did you see any offensive lineman get, traded outside of Cam Robinson who hasn't been good and is going to be looking for a big contract? So what happens?